Great. We're on air. It is Thursday, October 15th. This is our last Backdrop status meeting before Bad Camp and the Backdrop Summit, which is next Thursday. So we're going to get very excited about that. Really quickly to go through our standard general announcements. The first and most exciting is that Dragon t-shirts and hoodies are now available. If you go to backdropcms.org/contribute, you can see examples, mock-ups of what each will look like. They're being printed as we speak, and we should be able to go and pick them up any day now. If you want to pick yours up in person, that's totally fine. T-shirts are going to be given away for free to contributors. Hoodies, we're expecting a $50 donation to cover our printing cost of all of the supplies, and then there's a little bit in there that gets kicked back to Backdrop as well. If you aren't going to be a Bad Camp and you still want a t-shirt or a hoodie, you can make a donation, and that cost will include your shipping cost. So hopefully anyone who wants one can get one. We've ordered more than we think are going to be needed at Bad Camp, specifically so that we can handle requests for them going forward in other events and other such things. So t-shirts and hoodies, very cute. They both have the dragon on them by popular demand. We've got a new dragon post for the back of the hoodie, which is the back of the dragon, which is adorable, and then our standard dragon on the front of the t-shirt. All right, next week at the Backdrop Summit, we do still have a couple of openings for speakers. We'd love if somebody else would be willing to do a show and tell differences between Drupal 7 and Backdrop. We would love it if anyone has any sites that they've built and want to do a show and tell on what they particularly loved about Backdrop, or just walk through the site, what it does, features they were able to get implemented. Anyone who's upgraded from Drupal 7, we would love to hear about. We're just going to the whole thing will be very loose in terms of format. I posted a rough schedule on the website with things we'd like to talk about. But really, it'll depend on who's in the room, what people want to hear. We might change that agenda a little bit day of. So if you have something you want to talk about, bring it with you. We can squeeze you in day of. We also had a request from the organizer of Drupal Camp Utah in February to find a speaker who will talk about Backdrop. So if anyone wants to go to Utah in February and get some excellent skiing in, let us know. We can put you in touch with the organizer of that camp. Send an email to info@Backdrop CMS, and we'll make that connection. Also, we still have free PHP Storm licenses for Backdrop contributed developers. So if you're working on a module theme layout for Backdrop, and you want to give PHP Storm a try, also send an email to info@backdropcms.org, and we can get a license key off to you. There are no updates from the PMC this week, so I'd like to turn it over to Nate for an update on community growth.
Hey. Okay, so every week we talk about our number of modules and contributors. We have 161 total projects for Backdrop CMS, including modules, layouts, and themes. And a total of 89 projects that are on backdropcms.org that are tagged with official releases. If you have a module on GitHub, but it's not on backdropcms.org, the process for getting it on backdropcms.org is making a tag, pushing that to GitHub, and then going to GitHub, and then creating a new release, which will let you type in release notes and things like that. And then once release is created, then that will get pushed over to backdropcms.org. So, Andy, since you're here, I wanted to give you a shout out, whether or not you were going to be here or not, but the issue in which Klonos just called out and said, I don't know, maybe Andy will come over and port responsive favicons for us. And then the next comment was, here's the responsive favicons module, which is pretty awesome. So thanks for doing that. We really don't expect you to port every module, but it's still pretty awesome when that sort of thing happens. So it's also great to see the speed at which you can port stuff is just really pretty phenomenal. So thanks again for doing all of that work. Let's see. So we have 39 total contributed authors. Gore has applied as of today. Gore's been participating with us in the core queue for a while, but he has ported Bootstrap to Drupal, which I think is a theme. I'm not really sure, but with the way themes and layouts go, it's a little bit interesting the way things work. So we're working out some things. He's also really interested in making it so that layouts can have classes on them, which would really facilitate the use of Bootstrap, because Bootstrap is entirely all class-based. Like it's a grid system that you need to specify classes on your regions in order to define the widths of things. That is fraught with other implications, but we're working it out in issue queue. So
I've also with the maintainer of the Bootstrap module, Mark Carver, in the Drupal.org issue queue about some of these same things, and I think he has a pretty strong idea of how to get that working, and is interested in doing the Backdrop port. So I'm not sure if Gore's working with Mark or not, but we've already addressed most of these issues. So we might be having a multiple issue queue, our first, which is kind of exciting. More people working on stuff is definitely better than less, but a multiple issue queue, multiple conversation problem too.
Okay, yeah, I'll bring that up in his application, because he's already ported the module and has put it up somewhere and is asking for review. But there's a couple of issues already, like it didn't maintain the Drupal 7 history and things like that, which if Mark decides to participate over in the Backdrop land too, I'm sure he would appreciate having all of his attributions all in place. Yeah. And that also makes merging between the Drupal project and the Backdrop project a lot easier if that history is there. So, yeah. Okay, I'll bring that up in that issue. Let's see. So there are 39 total contributed authors. If you'd like to join the Backdrop Contrib group to make it so that you can get your ported or new modules and themes up on backdropcms.org, then visit github.com/backdrop-ops/contrib, and that's our repository that we use mostly just for an issue queue to go through the process of reviewing the application for a module. And then once you're in the Backdrop Contrib group, you can create modules and themes and layouts willy-nilly. But so it's a one-time approval process, which isn't very strict at all. Okay, on to infrastructure tasks. So infrastructure tasks, let's see, we've had this update checking on backdropcms.org for a long time, but we keep talking about it every week because we're not accruing usage statistics correctly right now. I realized somebody I should actually say who that is, Herbdol, filed a ticket against Project Module saying, Nate mentioned that the number crunching script was broken, but I can't find an issue. And I felt kind of bad that we've been talking about this for weeks and I hadn't actually made an issue anywhere. So now we have an issue over in Project Module, issue number 9, that our analytics data is not accruing correctly. That problem is a really gnarly one to solve because you have to have usage data in order to test that it crunches correctly. And so if you're interested in working on that project, send an email to info@backdropcms.org and we'll get you a dump of the database of backdropcms.org before we ran the number crunching script the first time, because now it's getting truncated all the time. But we have a bunch of usage numbers that we can test on that we need to get that problem fixed. So that would be great to have a volunteer for that. But it's not terrible, but it would be nice. It would make it so that we could sort projects by the amount of times that they're installed, the usage, rather than just sorting them by, I think it was the time they were created is the current sort order right now, which isn't ideal. Let's see, Project Browser, we're hoping possibly in the next release that you will be able to find as well as install modules directly from within Backdrop without needing to visit backdropcms.org. And that's called Project Browser and Project Browser Server. Project Browser Server is actually up and running on backdropcms.org, and you can download the contrib module of Project Browser from GitHub and try it out. It actually works really pretty well. There's some issues with the way Project Browser Server is set up, not the module, but in backdropcms.org's implementation of Project Browser Server. And again, like if we had usage statistics, that could make our returned results more useful by sorting them in the order of which most popular modules first. Let's see, Drush for Backdrop. Man, this is one of our oldest, longest issues. We'd really love to have Drush work on Backdrop to make it so that you could do, a Drush CC all, Drush install Backdrop, Drush DL, all of those things that we're used to using Drush for. We've kind of been slumming it for over a year now without any command line tool for doing those things. We have we have some scripts, like we have the ability to install Backdrop from the scripts. There's install.sh and runtests.sh and a couple other ones, but those a la carte scripts, not very many people are familiar with them in the first place, and they're just not very versatile. So there's been some work on getting that, actually a lot of work, getting Drush working for Backdrop, but it's still not quite functional. Jen, do you know the latest on it?
Yeah, so somebody new showed up working on it recently whose name is Uber Hacker, who said he was able to get it working, but the way that he said it was getting working, I have not been able to reproduce. So I think that what happens with Drush is that if it's unable to find like a Drupal site in the current location, it falls back to another location. And I think that what he's got going on is that the Drush he's running is falling back to a Drupal site. And so he thinks it's working because all the commands are returning the right responses. But I don't think it is actually working because I followed his exact setup instructions and it does not work for me. I've asked him specifically about a couple of the issues that I've run into, and he's kind of ignored the questions. So I don't know if it's just that he didn't think it was an issue, so he hasn't responded. But there's no confirmation that anyone's actually gotten it working except for this guy, which I think if we need to get somebody else confirming that works. So I don't know, Jeff, if you have any time, if you could take a look at his recommended solution and see if you can get that working. I tried it, doesn't work for me. But I do have time set aside to work with Greg Anderson this coming week at Badcamp to sit down next to each other and figure out like some of the things that he has committed to the latest version of Drush should be working, and I haven't been able to get those working either. So there could be an issue with my setup as well. So I think having more people try this thing out would be really valuable. So the issue we're at right now is that we use a database connection string like Drupal 6. If we tell Drush that Backdrop is Drupal 7, it will look for a database style array, and it won't find one. So we basically need to use the database connection style of Drupal 6 plus all of the other things of Drupal 7. And so short term, I think what we can do is kind of trick Drush into using the Drupal 6 style database connection along with Drupal 7 and everything else. But what we want to do long term is kind of abstract that out into a Backdrop thing where it'll say, hey, if it's Backdrop, then you use this style of database connection string and this style of other stuff. But we need to kind of figure out what the right process is for doing the tricking into making Drush think that Backdrop is Drupal 7, and then also into doing the overrides. Once it thinks it's 7, how do we then override things that aren't 7? And the suggestions that were mentioned in the post are not working for me. So if you look, I think, Jeff, the only thing you need to look at is, it's like comment, comment number, let me just throw this issue in the queue. These Drupal comment numbers are long. Here, I'm going to post it in the chat. But this is this one comment where he said he just added the string version, which I don't think is a good idea because we don't want Drupal modules finding that string and thinking that it's running Drupal 7. But if we can confirm that adding that gets Drush working, then I think that we can add it not in Backdrop, but in our Drush class for Backdrop. And then that way, that would only exist when you're running Drush commands, and it wouldn't exist in Backdrop itself. So we just need to figure out if that actually works, and if so, where to put it. I haven't been able to get it to work, so fair warning. I'm excited to sit down with Greg and get it working. So soon.
Yeah, I'm hoping we'll get a lot of hands-on time with developers connecting at BADCamp.
Yeah.
Super. Why don't you go ahead and talk about the website?
Sure. So latest change to the website was adding the addition of the modules and themes and layouts pages. We have some follow-up issues on those that just involve some more development tasks so that we can have tools to implement the rest of our design. And that includes things like making sure that our update data, what's that called? Update status data is aggregated and counted correctly so that we can do things like display that information on the page. We need to get the information correct, but then we also need to build integration with views or Solar or whatever it is we're going to use to render those pages. So there are some development tasks there as well. The next step will be allowing people to log in to the Backdrop website. We're hoping to give people kind of a way to join the community that feels like signing up for something, even if there isn't actually a lot there you can do yet. So I think letting people register on the site would be good. If you already have a GitHub account, letting you do a single sign-on, either right away or in the future. So if you don't want to create a Backdrop account, you can just log in with GitHub. But if we let people create accounts first, we need to later then sync the GitHub account with the Backdrop account so that they can have access to their own projects and similar. So we will eventually figure that out. That's kind of next on our radar. And then we also would also like to set up a showcase site so that anyone who can log into the website can post sites that they've built. They should be able to post themselves as a service provider so people can find service providers. We'd like to include our event calendar, even though Google Cal feeds are fun. We want a central location where anyone can add any event to the calendar. Job listings, all the stuff that's worked really well for the Drupal community should be duplicated in Backdrop land as well. So we'll get to those. All right, Backdrop, the product. Our next release is 1.2.3, which is kind of an exciting number. We don't have anything urgent that is demanding a release date for that release, but as we get bug fixes, we'll put them in, and then when they're ready, we will cut a release. We have a new version of Drupal out, so we need to backport the fixes that got into Drupal 7.40 to make sure that those get into the next version of Backdrop as well. It looks like we don't have an issue yet for that on Backdrop, but we can create one today and get that going. That's a great thing to, you've just got a couple 3 minutes of time. Porting over some patches from Drupal to Backdrop is nice, quick, easy, generally painless task.
Yeah, I also wanted to interject here that it's exciting 7.40, which is also just kind of an incredibly high number that there have been 40 minor releases of Drupal 7. But it's a relatively minor release. Like, there's nothing really serious in there, and I think actually there's only there's like 20, 25 issues in there, which is pretty small as far as Drupal releases go. But one of our patches that we started in the Backdrop queue actually made it into that version of Drupal, which is kind of exciting. That speeds up the parsing of info files like 3 times and reduces the memory footprint by like 50 megabytes. So it was a total huge improvement, and I wanted to say that when we run across these issues, and we've run across a lot of them, especially in CK editor land, we're doing a lot of collaboration as well, that we are cross-filing them because we're running into a lot of things in Drupal, well, in both Drupal 8 and in Drupal 7 that a lot of people aren't really looking too deeply at, because Drupal 7, not a lot of people are looking at improving the base core right now. I mean, there are a lot of people, but not quite in the same way that we're looking at it, because we're changing a lot more things than Drupal 7 is. So we kind of have approach things with a little bit more liberty. And in Drupal 8 land, not a lot of people are using Drupal 8, and so we run into all of these Drupal 8 feature problems with, particularly with CK Editor, that we're cross-filing back to Drupal. So we are getting a lot of collaboration that way, and it's actually been nice to get, because of the Drupal's larger community, we get validation faster over there to make it so that we feel like it's good for Backdrop to go ahead and implement it in there. And then finally, like the review process takes longer in Drupal, but we're seeing some of those get back into Drupal now, which is exciting.
Hooray.
So, yay, collaboration.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. Why don't you go ahead and take 1.3.0 back over too? I just wanted to add that.
Okay. So Backdrop 1.3 is scheduled to come out on January 15th, and this is our first usability release, where we're focusing mostly on cleaning up all of the fancy new features we've added recently and doing some other significant improvements just to make the product more powerful. I think one of the things that WordPress does really well is its focus on user experience, and having a whole entire release devoted to it, I think, is going to help us kind of clean up some of our dirty edges a little bit and make a more polished product. So I'm really excited about it. A couple of things we have scheduled for that are follow-up issues related to layouts, which we kind of created a minimum viable product and put it right in. We know there's a bunch of follow-ups. We'll get to those. We'll get them cleaned up, which will be great. We've got same thing for rich text editor. We got a new feature. We got it in. There's definitely a bunch of polish we can add there, so we've got follow-ups as well. We have a bunch of leftover issues that were modules that got moved into Drupal 8 that we also needed to evaluate moving into Backdrop. We got some of them half done, things like getting all of our administration listings changed into views. We've got one left. The comment list needs to be converted to Backdrop, or a view in Backdrop as well. We've got some really, really hard tasks, like let's evaluate the field UI and see if there are little things we can do to make it better, or if we should rewrite the whole thing. And we know it's been a problem since Drupal 6. It got worse in Drupal 7. It's been around unchanged for the last 5 years. How do we make that a better experience for people? And there's been a ton of really great work going on trying to kind of rethink that from the ground up. And then there's just a bunch of little teeny tiny things like making sure we use words consistently and correctly in core, trying to make administrative interfaces a little bit more intuitive, like the menu administration screens, and just a ton of little tiny things. I think what we should do is, as we find these issues, we'll tag a handful of them 1.3, and we can, depending on the craziness of the issue, if those get done before 1.3, they can go in any of our bug fix releases. If it's something as crazy as like rewrite field UI, that's obviously going to need to wait for a 1.3 release. But we have so many little tiny things that we can improve along the way. I don't think they all need to wait for 1.3, but I think that that should be our focus as user experience until 1.3. So hopefully by 1.3, we'll have a fantastic, better to use product. So I'm really looking forward to focusing on some of the little things for a while. Since 1.3 is a user experience improvement release, we've started also thinking about features that we want to add in 1.4. So this will be in May of 2016. And currently, the first thing on that list is getting references module or a references module equivalent in. I took a look at entity reference and decided that the style of the code in that module wasn't really in line with where we wanted Backdrop's code to be. But the features provided by that module are exactly where we want Backdrop's features to be. So I think that what we should do is look at the code in references module, look at the features provided by entity reference module, and see if there's a way that we can kind of make a hybrid of the two for Backdrop, so that we have easy to read, understandable code, but still provide the ability to reference any entity from a single field, rather than having to have a field type for user reference, a field type for node reference. So I think we'll try and figure out how to get there, and I think giving us until May is a great, plenty of time to do it. So just definitely, you guys, as you're building sites in Backdrop, keep in mind the features you find yourself using over and over again. If you think you're installing one module on every single site, it starts to feel like an 80% use case. mods candidate for moving into core. We have until May to get those done, so we need to start thinking about what we want to put on that list. So be thinking hats and let us know. Other things we're always working on are developer experience issues. So if you're working on, redirect would be great. Actually, redirect. So sorry, Jeff just mentioned redirect. We have, I don't know. This could probably even get into 1.3, but we have a plan for how to make global redirects happen all the time. Like it's a small improvement. It's not necessarily a feature addition. But something as crazy as redirect module that has its own interface and its own integration into node forms, that might need to be a 1.4 style thing. Let's evaluate. That's a good candidate though. It's a good idea. Okay, developer experience issues. As you're working on building sites, if you find something is non-intuitive or overly hard, too time consuming, create an issue. We're trying to make the experience of developing code for Backdrop easier. We need to identify the pain points and try and figure out how to solve them. Not all of these things can be solved in the 1.x release cycle because they may require API changes, but it would be good to note them so that when we start thinking about what we're going to do in 2.x, we can think about what are the most important things for changing. So keep those, tag them on GitHub with square brackets DX, and we'll keep an eye on those. Every Thursday, we usually do a little sprinting. We meet together on our IRC channel, Pound Backdrop. We're chatting in the GitHub issue queue as well. That's where most activity is. We also have a Reddit. So if you're not into IRC and you're not on GitHub, you can chat with people on Reddit as well. We are eventually going to open up the Backdrop website, as we said, as another place to try and figure out how to facilitate communication a little bit more easily. So hopefully we'll have more avenues for communication and collaboration here in the future. Thursday afternoons are a great day to work on Backdrop because there are a bunch of other people working on Backdrop. But if you can't work on Backdrop on Thursday and can on any other day of the week, that is just fine. We'll take what we can get. Upcoming events. I'm not sure if anyone here attended the Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit, but I heard that it ended up being on Canadian Thanksgiving, which is a little bit unfortunate, probably affected their turnout. So not so great. I heard the people that were there had a really good time. I've talked to a couple of people that heard a lot of great sessions and hung out with a lot of fun people, which is what's important, but haven't gotten any other more specific feedback on it. Bad Camp is next week. We talked about that a little bit already. Drupal Camp Ohio is the same weekend as Bad Camp. They're a Backdrop-friendly event. Drupal Camp Mexico is November 5th through 7th, so if you want a little getaway at the beginning of your winter to where it's sunny and beautiful, it's definitely, Nate and I went to Drupal Camp Mexico last year. We really liked the community down there. It was a really fun event. And then Drupal Camp Utah is the same weekend as Sand Camp in February 2016. So if anyone else has any events they are planning on attending or want to be added to the Backdrop events calendar, email them to info@backdropcms.org and they'll get added. Or you can post them in IRC or similar. We'll figure it out. Publicity, the new version of Drupal Watchdog is out. I've got 500 copies here, so if anyone wants one, let me know. But that means that the Backdrop article feature story is no longer in the latest version of Drupal Watchdog. It is in the previous version of Drupal Watchdog. So I took that off of our publicity list here. Most important thing, I think, for us right now is to harp about how awesome our dragon hoodies and t-shirts are going to be. So definitely try and find yourself one of those. All right, is there anything else we should talk about this week, or questions, comments, things we should add to the agenda to talk about every week?
I mentioned this in the design call, and I need to mention it again, that because literally 1 week from today is the Backdrop Summit at Bad Camp in Berkeley. It's a lot of bees. We won't be having a weekly status meeting next week. So if you're in Berkeley, we would love to see you. We will be there in person, chatting all day long, a day-long meeting of Backdrop. And where are we located, Jen?
We're at the Marsh Arts Center.
The Marsh.
So that's the same place as the Nonprofit Summit. So I figured that would be a great kind of overlap of audiences. We're actually going to be in the bar area. They're going to turn it into classroom-style seating for us, and we'll have a little projector so we can do a bunch of little talks. But the bar opens at 4:30, and all of the nonprofit people will start flooding in shortly after that, so we can go chit-chat and tell them about how amazing the Backdrop Summit was, and yeah, make friends.
So the Backdrop Summit is actually in the bar.
But the bartenders won't start serving drinks until 4:30, so don't get excited.
Okay, that's funny. Okay, that's great.
Coffee in the morning.
The nonprofit people will come over and they'll come to us, and then we'll be there and just be ready to chat them all up about how great Backdrop is for nonprofits.
Why not?
Sounds great. It's almost like we have an in on the organizing of this conference.
Almost.
Okay, excellent.
All right, well, Andy, I'm sorry you're not feeling well. I wish you would be able to be at Bad Camp. Jeff, I also am sad you're not coming to Bad Camp, but you guys will be with us in spirit, if nothing else. Luke, I'm excited you're coming. Woohoo! We're definitely looking forward to getting to meet a whole bunch of people in person and talking about Backdrop. So, all right, bye everyone.
All right, thanks everybody for joining. Thanks everybody for watching. Bye guys.
Bye-bye.